Would you be the jerk for not caring about your wife having her phone stolen? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for addressing my cousin as Miss and not Doctor on a police setting and telling her to stop acting as if the world revolved around her degree? Me, female 28, and my fiance recently had our engagement party. It was mostly close friends and family, and overall was an amazing time. We had place settings for everyone with their names on cards, as well as their title, Miss, Mr., MX, etc. It was a formal event, so that's how I decided to do it. It wasn't even that serious, obviously. On my cousin's card it said Miss. She has a doctorate degree, and she came up to me at the end of the night asking why her card said Miss and not Doctor. And also her partner's editing to add that in. I said sorry, it's not that big of a deal, but she seemed to get upset and said I was devaluing her and her profession. I didn't want to deal with her right then, and I had other people to talk to. So I just sort of ignored her and went on my way. Later, she texted and again she said how this was apparently disrespectful. I got kind of annoyed, so I told her to stop acting like the world revolves around her useless degree and making a big deal out of nothing. To be fair, I think if you're going to go around placing name cards and you use honorific titles, which is exactly what Miss, Mr. so-and-so is, you kind of want to make sure you use the appropriate one. I think OP made a greater mistake other than not getting the titles right. I think using them at all without checking was the worst mistake. Am I wrong here, or did OP kind of go about this all wrong? Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for embarrassing my sister at her engagement party by uncovering her lies about our childhood? Yesterday was my sister's, 25-year-old female, engagement party. Me and my two brothers, one is 22, two of us are 21, have been on the other side of the US for the majority of 2023, and didn't think we were going to be there for the party, but plans shifted and we ended up arriving home last Wednesday. Now, I'm honestly not sure if I was invited so much as we simply happened to live where the event was being hosted, because it was held in my parents' house. My sister didn't outright say she didn't want us there, but we didn't see much of her in the lead-up. We didn't really know any of the people at the party, so we were going around introducing ourselves to people, mingling, doing the party thing. At some point, someone mentions the family photos on the wall and how they were surprised to see a ton of us on the wall when they didn't even know my sister had siblings. This sent me down a whole rabbit hole of confusion. This person elaborated and said she was surprised to see this type of photo on the wall because apparently my sister had told all of her friends that my parents were extreme workaholics. We have a really nice house, so they weren't surprised by that, just that it felt properly homey and lived in. Once again, I was thrown for a loop. Growing up, our home was the home. We had friends over constantly who were basically like extra siblings. My parents worked a normal amount, and they were home with us as much as possible. We got chauffeured around to sports practices. My parents took time to get to know all of our friends well, etc. I would even go so far as to say that they were more involved in our lives than average. It was my sister who really separated herself from everyone and chose to exclude herself from activities. At some point during this conversation, a few other people overheard, and soon enough, there was a decent crowd of her friends around my brothers and I listening to the stories of us growing up that were blowing these people's minds because it's apparently common knowledge among their friend group that our parents were so hands-on, and uncommon knowledge that we even existed. I ended up having a really good time and felt like I made some new friends. After the event, apparently my sister was crying because I embarrassed her in front of all of her friends, and the work she had put in to separate herself from us golden children had been undone. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP did anything wrong here. I mean, all of these people were just like astounded by what the truth actually is compared to what they thought it was. OP wasn't on like some kind of smear campaign or anything, they were just talking to people. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my sister that how I spend my money is not her business? I, 24-year-old female, live alone and have a job that allows me to cover my expenses and save something every month. I've been playing a game I really like for almost 2 years, and ever since I got my job, I've spent €5 nearly every month on it for a 30-day pass. Recently, my sister, 19-year-old female, saw me do my monthly purchase and said very snappily that if I had money to waste, I should use it on my nephew, her son, 2 years old, because he needs new clothes. To be honest, this made me feel like she didn't appreciate all I do for her. I babysit, I buy her formula and diapers when she's running short, I gift him toys and clothes and shoes, and I admittedly lost my cool. I told her that it's my money and I get to choose how to spend it, and that my nephew wouldn't need my €5 if she went clubbing less, and used that money for him instead. My sister got really mad at me and told my mother everything, and while she agreed that I get to spend my money however I want, she felt that I was too judgmental of her parenting. Am I the jerk? I think 100% not the jerk. If this is a situation where she starts ragging on you because you spend $5 on something that you want in a month because you're not spending it on her and her kid, you have every right to go back and analyze whatever she's doing. She invited that level of insight. Our next story is, am I the jerk for expecting my wife to support my elderly parents? My wife has a high-paying job and earns significantly more than I do. I work as a teacher and make around $40,000, while she works in the private sector and makes $300,000 to $400,000 after tax. We split our finances equitably, with her paying 70% to my 30%. A little background, her parents both immigrated to this country, so she and her sisters could succeed in life, and now all have very high-paying jobs. One working in tech and the other being a surgeon. Meanwhile, my parents worked government jobs, and my sister lives on benefits, so we're a relatively low-income family. My wife did help my younger sister when she became a single mother at a young age by offering her a secretary job at her office, but my sister quit after a month as she found it too difficult, which I can understand, as she was raising a baby on her own. Recently, her parents retired, and she and her sister gave them around £2,000 every month, which I find ridiculous as they have pensions. Why do they need £6,000? She assured me that this money does not come out of our joint account. However, when I brought up my parents were also retired and could use the help, she told me that if I could afford to send it from my own salary, I should. I was shocked and angry. My parents only had me to depend on while her sisters made a lot of money, so her parents would be fine either way. My wife told her parents sacrificed a lot by moving to this country. It is her responsibility, and my parents should be my responsibility. She says I'm being a jerk for asking her to support my parents when she's never put pressure towards me for not contributing more to our household. We had a similar argument before about loaning my sister some money to put a down payment on her house, but my wife said she wouldn't use her money as she thinks my sister is unreliable and won't pay her back. I just don't understand how she can be so cheap because she earns so much more than me. Am I the jerk for asking my wife to support my family? Don't get me wrong, it would certainly be nice if she was willing to help out, but the fact of the matter is, this is all money that she's making on her own that isn't in your joint account, going to her personal family. She's not stealing money from you, she's not siphoning any money and redirecting it to help her own needs. Although they do make more money than OP, that doesn't mean that they have to support your parents too. On top of that, apparently the wife does most of the household stuff and parenting. Honestly, I think OP is in the wrong here. Our next story is, am I the jerk for purposely not intervening and letting my little sister cause a minor accident with my car and making her partially cover damages to teach her a lesson about distracted driving? My 25-year-old male, little sister, female, 18, let's call her Christy, has recently gotten her license. She obviously thinks she's an incredible driver and can handle a car no matter what. After only 4 months of driving, she has already become one of those girls who put their phone between their thighs to be able to look at messages and to access it quickly while driving. It drives us all insane, to be honest, and I and other family members have talked to her about it multiple times. It goes in one ear and out the other. Yesterday, she did it again while driving my car when we were out getting groceries. She had been distracted for almost the whole drive and even continued to look at her phone after a brief break when I told her to cut it. When she was about to roll into a parking spot, she probably got a message and looked down at her phone. I noticed that she was about to ram into a lantern, and when I was sure she wouldn't cause damage to other vehicles, I decided to just let her run into it instead of intervening. It was a huge shock to her, and she just sat there completely still for like 15 seconds processing what just happened. It wasn't until I said, "Will you learn to leave that freaking phone alone now?" that she spoke again. The first thing she said was, "Why didn't you tell me?" in an absolutely baffled tone. And I told her straight up that I didn't tell her so she'd learn a lesson. She was absolutely livid and tried to push all the blame onto me for not intervening, but I told her it would have been the same outcome had I not been there, and that ultimately she, as a driver, is responsible for not only her but all the passengers' safety. Christy was absolutely gobsmacked that she freaked around and found out. Even more so when I told her that she would have to account for half the damages caused in the accident that the insurance wouldn't cover. In total, that was just shy of $200. Blown out light, bent bumper, and a dent in the hood, plus a few scrapes and the damage to the pole of the lantern. She went completely wild. But I told her that she's lucky I'm not making her pay for everything, since she was driving while being on the phone. A few days after the insurance gave me the sum and I told Christy what she owes me, which she paid immediately, she told me that apparently because of this, she won't be able to go on a trip with her friends, and that I'm a massive jerk. She also added that she would have learned her lesson otherwise too. I personally doubt that she would have, and honestly, distracted drivers are the worst. Am I the jerk? Was it a little bit drastic? Could OP have warned them and maybe there would have been a lesson learned? Sure. But personally, I do think that even if they might have realized maybe I shouldn't look at my phone as much, they truly wouldn't have learned that lesson unless they hit that lantern. And honestly, OP paying half of it? I think they more than bailed them out here. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not telling my brother that my dog, who used to be his dog, passed away? My brother bought Chuck when he was a puppy and looked after him really well until he was 5. Then he fell in love with a woman who doesn't like dogs. She told him to choose between her and Chuck. So he chose her and gave Chuck to me before moving to a different city with her. At first, he would regularly ask for updates on how Chuck is doing and I'd send him photos and videos. He gradually contacted me less and less though. 2 years after giving me the dog, he stopped asking and I stopped sending updates. We'd only call each other on birthdays and the holidays. Chuck lived with me for 9 years before he died. I didn't tell my brother. He didn't know until our dad called him. Now he's telling me that I should have told him about it since he loved Chuck too. Should I have called him to inform him? I mean, I don't think OP's outright a jerk here, but it seemed to me like there was some level of interest in Chuck, even if, yeah, it waned and they stopped asking after a while. I mean, they kind of just got used to not having Chuck around, I assume. I think it would have been nice if OP reached out and just mentioned, hey, unfortunately, so-and-so happened with Chuck. I just think personally, if I was in that situation, I feel like they would maybe want to know. But I don't think OP's outright a jerk for not. This next story is, am I the jerk for taking my toddler on a daddy-daughter date without telling my wife? My wife and I have been married for a little over 2 years, and she recently gave birth to our daughter a little over a year ago. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. Every Friday, I take our daughter out on a daddy-daughter date around noonish. However, this past Friday, I took her out for our date earlier in the morning. My wife has been exhausted caring for her, and I wanted her to get some extra sleep. I took off from work and our daughter out for breakfast and to the toy shop. I didn't text my wife, which I realize now wasn't a good idea, but she's a light sleeper and I didn't want to wake her. I forgot I didn't have my ringer on my phone and I missed her first 2 calls. Needless to say, she wasn't happy with me. She said while she understood and appreciated the gesture, I should have at least texted her to let her know that we were gone. Am I the jerk? Yeah, I think if you're going to take your kid out, you should let your wife know what's going on. Just leave a text if you've got to. Or write some kind of post-it note and put it on their phone by the bedside table or something. It's not really a big deal here when you know where your kids are and everything was alright, but I think it's a good lesson just to know, give them a heads up. This next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to clean my room after my parents dumped my brother's trash in it? I have a decent room. I keep the trash out, but I'm not that organized. My brother's almost 20 years old and still lives at home. I'm 15. My parents are nice and there's no golden child thing going on. So last week, one of the outlets in my brother's room sparked and shut the power down to his entire room. And his room had to run off of a generator or something. So on Friday, the electric guy came to fix his bedroom, and my brother had a bunch of boxes and trash in his room. So my mom and my brother made the absolutely genius decision to dump all his trash into my room. When I came home, I was ticked because there were 3 boxes, 2 trash bags, one fell down and it was open, and trash spilled all over my room. I was really ticked. I decided that I was just going to ignore all the trash in my room. Yesterday, my mom came into my room and told me to clean my disgusting room, and I told her that she needs to clean my room because she is the one who made the mess in my room. She told me it's my responsibility to clean my own room because she gives me my housing and food. I told her I didn't ask to be born. Then she threatened to take away my computer, and I told her that she can pay me $1,000 for it because I paid for the whole thing. She told me I was being entitled. Now she's all mad and my room is still not clean. Am I being an entitled jerk? OP is 1,000,000% not being the jerk. And honestly, she's laid the rules out here. OP's next strategy? Take all of that stuff and throw it either right back in the brother's room, or even better, throw it in her room and explain that now that it's in her room, it's her responsibility to clean up. Our next story is, am I the jerk for making my sister pay for my kid's babysitter when she won't watch them? I, female 28, let my sister, 20, live with us while she goes to university. In return, she pays us $500 a month. This covers her room, the extra water and power, and her food. I think it's very fair. She also does chores and helps with the kids. That was our agreement. We wrote everything down so there was no confusion. My understanding is that room and board at her school is $1,200 a month for shared accommodation, and it is only available during the 8 months of school. So living here is $6,000 a year as opposed to $9,600 for 8 months, and then 4 months living with our mom and stepdad. All was well for 2 years. She's a good student and a good kid, but she has a boyfriend now, and she started complaining about watching the kids every other Saturday night, so my husband and I can have a date night. So I told her that I would find a sitter, but that she was responsible for paying them, since she was supposed to watch the kids. Now she's complaining that with her paying the sitter, it's using up all of her disposable income. She said she may as well stay on campus next year. I agreed and told her that was a great idea. She gets her freedom and I get my hobby room back. My mom called me and said that my sister wasn't my unpaid nanny. I told her that I'd already agreed that she could live on campus next semester. Then she said I was being a bench because that would increase the amount they're paying for her, and that 4 months away from her job and boyfriend was cruel. I'm kind of torn. We had a deal and I think it was fair. Am I the jerk? If you can find somewhere to stay that is decent for $500 a month, I completely understand having an extra stipulation of helping with chores and helping with the kids. And that was the agreement that you guys agreed upon. So yeah, I don't think Opie's the jerk here at all. They just started getting a taste of living even more adult life and decided, hey, I don't want all these other responsibilities. Well, that's not what you agreed to, so you're free to do that somewhere else. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my stepfather I might throw my graduation party in his face forever? When I graduated, my family threw a big graduation party for me. I said I wanted my entire family to be there. If anyone wanted separate celebrations, we could just not celebrate because it was my big day and I'm sick of that crap. Everyone agreed and promised to be nice to each other. At the party, things were going really well at first. Everyone was having fun. Then my stepfather started giving my stepmother a bunch of unsolicited advice about her daughter and her daughter's autism. My stepsister was also right there and could hear what he was saying. My dad told my stepfather to walk away, but he kept insisting he knew what he's talking about because he's a teacher. It eventually devolved into a screaming match where my stepmother called him a worthless piece of crap and he called her a psychotic expletive. The party was ruined. I got my grandparents to kick my stepfather out, but the mood was ruined, and my dad's side of the family quickly found excuses to leave, so I pulled the plug on the party. Each time my stepfather has tried to talk to me since then, I've said, "What's up, guy who ruined my graduation party?" This really upsets him. He says it's not fair to blame him, because my stepmother acted just as poorly. I said it is fair and I absolutely blame him. He asked how long I would blame him for and keep throwing the party in his face. I said maybe forever. He said I was too old to be acting like such a little jerk. My mom asked me to be the bigger person and let sleeping dogs lie, but I'm not ready to do that. These dogs are very much awake and ticked off. Am I the jerk for that? Definitely not the jerk. Nobody asked for that advice. He started sticking his nose in places it did not belong, and yeah, they kind of ruined the whole party, especially when OP made sure everybody agreed and promised to be nice to each other beforehand. For that to happen, it sucks. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my daughter I will not be walking her down the aisle unless she invites her siblings and their families to her wedding? I, 56-year-old male, have 5 children. This is about 3 of them: Casey, 26-year-old female, Alex, 31 non-binary, and Tom, 34-year-old male. The names are not their true names. My daughter Casey is getting married this winter to her fiance Max, 27-year-old male, who she's been together with for about 4 years. I'm covering the majority of the wedding expenses as Max's family lives in a different country, and with the currency exchange rate they won't be able to afford the wedding and both to come to the wedding. I have no issues with it and just want my little girl to be happy. Last week while Casey was away, my children Alex and Tom came to visit with their families and we were talking about wedding invitations. I was surprised to hear that they haven't received their wedding invitations, so I just thought that Casey hasn't sent them out yet for everyone, until my oldest and youngest daughters pointed out that they've received their invitations with their kids and partners invited. I called my sister, who also said Casey has invited their whole family to the wedding too, and she received hers a while back. So I immediately saw red. Both Alex and Tom have husbands and have children, adopted, and it seemed Casey has excluded them because of their chores. It also seemed weird since Casey has always been close to them and supported them when they came out as non-binary and gay respectively. I've called Casey and demanded an explanation. My daughter said that Max and his family don't feel comfortable with couples that are not traditional, and it goes against their culture and that she hopes for my understanding. I told her if that's the case, I will not be walking her down the aisle and pull out from paying for her wedding, as she cannot exclude her family like this when they did nothing wrong, and if her future in-laws' opinion is so important to her, they can pay for the wedding. As a result, Casey has called me a jerk and hung up crying. My children are on my side. My wife is torn as she understands where Casey comes from, but agrees she shouldn't have excluded her siblings like this. You know, they can stick to their guns and say, oh, it's just a culture thing, and exclude people because of sexuality or personal identity. But I think it's a more than valid reason for you to say, well, I'm not going to support that kind of behavior, and if you wanted to pull out of paying for the wedding or actively participating in it, I definitely understand where you're coming from. Our next story is, am I the jerk for making my brother move out after he told me he uses the sink to pee? My brother, 27-year-old male, recently broke up with his boyfriend that he lived with for a while and asked me if he could stay with me, 24-year-old female, while he's looking for a new apartment. I agreed, and he's been staying for around a month until this happened. I don't have a huge place myself, so he's been staying in my living room where I have a sofa bed. One thing I noticed is that he doesn't really keep it tidy, and often when I come back from work, I see a mess, which really bothers me because I'd like to come home to a clean place, which I do when I live on my own. The bathroom has also gotten a bit messy, and he actually doesn't offer to clean it even though it's mostly a mess he's made. I started noticing pee around the toilet and know for sure it's not me. I mentioned that to him, and he apologized and said he'll be more careful and clean it up, but he also added he saw I'd thrown out pads, implying it was gross. It's a closed trash can. One day we were hanging out in the living room and he laughed at a TikTok and showed it to me. It was something along the lines of men peeing in sinks or whatever. So I asked him if he does that or if he'd done it here, to which he laughed and said yes. I told him that it's disgusting considering it's not his bathroom he's doing it in, and that I've probably touched the sink after he'd done that. I kind of kept going and told him to stop doing that or start packing his bags. He said I was overreacting and called me selfish and that he's not dirty and that this isn't a big deal. He even told our parents that I'm kicking him out because he's messy, but he never said he peed in the sink. I'm aware that a lot of men might be doing this, but I'm not gonna let it happen in my own bathroom that I clean myself. My parents say I'm being mean and didn't believe me when I said he pees in the sink. So am I the jerk? I think the most important thing here is he has demonstrated he's not a very cleanly person no matter what he says. He leaves his immediate living area pretty filthy. He obviously makes a mess when going to the bathroom. So let's be real, if he waddles up to the sink and does his business there, let's say, they make contact with the sink or the area around the sink on the counter. Do you really believe that they're going to be the kind of person to clean up that entire area after they're done peeing in the sink real quick? Shoot, they probably wouldn't even rinse the sink out afterwards. I just can't blame OP because, considering everything, I think it's more than reasonable that OP wants them out of there for more than just the sink peeing. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to pay for what his daughter broke? Or get out of my house? My 34-year-old female brother-in-law Luke is married to my stepsister Anna. Luke has a 9-year-old daughter Rue with his ex-wife, and he and Anna have a 4-year-old daughter Lola. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Charlotte. Currently, Luke, Anna, the kids, our parents, and my brother are staying at my house for a holiday. 2 days ago, Rue snuck into my daughter's playroom and broke several of her toys and things. This was all captured on my nanny cam. Rue has always been destructive, and Luke has always been less than forthcoming with paying up for things she's broken, though to be fair, we've never asked him to. This time, however, seeing in 4K how malicious Rue was and how Luke has done nothing to curb her behavior over the years, I was extremely angry. Also, there's a piece of one of the items she broke that we've been unable to find, which will up the cost of repair, and a couple of dress-up items were custom made. Luke was extremely apologetic, but I told him the only way to make this right would be to pay for what got ruined, and I presented him with an itemized invoice. Luke said he didn't have that kind of money readily available, but I am adamant that he and Rue cannot keep acting like these things don't have consequences. I said either he pays, or he can find somewhere else to stay for the duration of the holiday or go home. He said he'll contact the bank tomorrow for money, but he's very upset about it and is accusing me of sinking him into difficult financial straits. My parents think I'm in the wrong for threatening to kick him out if he doesn't pay. They think I should ask for only what he can comfortably afford to pay, and that maybe I shouldn't invite them back, but they think I shouldn't ruin a trip that's already started. Anna's stuck in the middle. She agrees that Luke doesn't do enough about Rue's behavior, but is worried how this is going to affect everyone's relationships, and also if they'll be able to afford the second trip they'd planned for the summer break. Rue has been sulking and crying pretty much non-stop since it happened, which has put Luke even more on edge. I don't think I'm the jerk for finally taking a stand against this sort of thing, but at the same time, I don't want to be punishing Anna and Lola by proxy or having a lasting impact on their lives. I really don't think OP's the jerk here. Although I do think they're in the right. I know if I was in that position and they were going on about, oh, it's going to ruin our second holiday, personally, I would feel a little bit of guilt over that. I probably would even give them some slack on it. But I think definitely, if you want to be involved with them again or have them over, you need to set up that firm boundary of, you either repay us, or it's all going to be from a distance going forward. This next story is, am I the jerk for not caring about my wife's stolen phone? A couple of days ago, we successfully closed on our first house. We, my wife I'll call Brenda, female 37, and me, male 37, spent that time and all day yesterday moving in. In the late afternoon, when we finally had everything moved in, I was taking selfies with Brenda and our son. We were also trying to include her parents, who will also live with us. Some guy was riding his bike on the sidewalk and stopped in front of the house. He offered to take my phone and take a group photo of us in front of the house. Now, sometimes you just get sus feelings about situations and/or people. And when I took a look at this guy, I thought to myself, there's no way I'm giving him my phone. I waved and smiled, thanking him for the kind offer, but we already had plenty of good pictures. Brenda, however, disagreed and thought a group photo in front of the house would be a wonderful idea. I gave her a look and said, no, we don't need one, so I'm not going to give him my phone. She scoffed at me and said she has her own phone. I tell her not to give him your phone. We have plenty of pictures. Ignoring me, Brenda walks over to the guy and hands him her phone. As she's walking back towards us, the guy immediately books it. Brenda gives chase but doesn't get very far very fast. She comes back to me and just loses it. She starts yelling at me about how I did absolutely nothing to stop him or to even attempt to chase after him. She's crying and her parents are also really upset, which starts to upset the boy. She asks me why didn't I do anything. I tell her that I did. I told you not to give him your phone, and that makes her even more mad. I'm sitting here with StarCraft on one screen and Reddit on the other, just replaying this whole thing in my head. She's been giving me the cold shoulder all day and won't talk to me. I'm starting to feel like maybe I could have, stepped in front of her, maybe told him to leave? I don't know. Am I the jerk here? If I was in OP's shoes, this would actually be definitely something that eats away at me for quite some time because I would be reliving that thing like, I could have done more, I could have stopped this. I should have stepped in and said, hey, this guy seems kind of suspicious, kind of seems weird. We don't need him to take a picture of our house. If anything, our parents are here apparently. They can take pictures, right? Could OP have done more? Sure, yeah, but does that make them the jerk? No, I definitely don't think so in my opinion. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.